This is a new feature of Legendary Tactics where we're going to tackle some of the original games, original war games that were released by Avalon Hill back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and what great games they are. We're looking for some hidden gems. This is Legendary Tactics. First thing, just to call your attention to the search board. So this is where the bulk of play happens. You can see the American forces start on this blue line here. We have to get used to the designations of ships. So CV is aircraft carrier, CL is light cruiser, CA is heavy cruiser, and BB is battleship. So the Americans start on this side of the board. The Japanese would start on this side of the board here. And Midway and Cure, they are regular hexes just like any other. Okay. The other thing to pay attention to is that they have these things called areas. So you can see the A, B, C, D across the top, the 1, 2, 3, 4 down the side. So B2 would be this area here. That's an area. The spaces in there, the 9 spaces that are in the area are zones. So just something to keep track of. The other board that is on here is the battle board. And this is where you have the actual pictures of the ships moving around and that sort of thing. And this is where air attacks happen and surface to surface combat happens if that occurs. We also have the hit record pad. Okay, so this is where hits are recorded. So as you can see, each ship has a certain amount of sort of hit points, whereas the Yamato has a whole bunch. The Yura only has 2. The Atlanta only has 3. And these are marked off as they happen and tracked that way. The search board counters basically are just as I said, they're just the ships there that are used for the big picture stuff, and then the battle board is really the small picture stuff. Just to go back to the battle board here just real quick. So you can see there's 2 numbers here. The first number is surface combat factor, and then the second number is screening value. Now, surface combat is kind of an advanced rule, but it's not that complicated. I'll explain it. Screening value is like your anti-aircraft value. So as airplanes attack, you would use this value. You can lend it to other ships, provided that they're close by. When there's an air battle, you set up your ships so that there's at least 1 space in between. You can be further away, but if you do that, you can only extend the screening value up to 2 spaces. So if you're this ship in the Yorktown, Vincennes and the Yorktown, they can't help each other out if they're like this. And for example, if there's a lot of planes attacking the Yorktown, the Vincennes can use the screening value to help defend the Yorktown. Basically, the game is won on, I'll just show you on the search board here. So the US player gets the number of points for sinking the enemy. Actually, I'll go to the hit record. So you can see these are the points here, the value of each of these ships if they are sunk. So if the Yura is sunk, that's 2 victory points. If the Akagi is sunk, that's 10 victory points. Also, on the time record, once you get to 0500 on June 5th, every turn that the Japanese have not taken control of Midway, the US player gets a point, and the Japanese player, as soon as they get Midway, they get 15 points for that, plus the value of any ships that they sink. So as I said, when you set up here, you've got the search board stuff here. You've got the US player sets up on this side, anywhere within the blue margins here, and the Japanese sets up along the red. So basically, on the first turn, The US can move up to 6 spaces for their first turn. The Japanese can move 2 whenever they move, and after the first turn, the US also only moves 2. You don't have to move anyone. You can move 0, 1, or 2 spaces, and that's for each ship. You can have as many ships stacked in the same space as you like. There's no limit. You can have the whole fleet in one space, or you can spread them out. So that is basically the setup in a nutshell. So as the game begins, the first thing is that the Japanese player moves their ships first, and this is all. It's almost like Battleship, really. You have to make sure that you know, you're doing your best to keep the secret, you know, the location of your ship secret. So the Japanese player moves you know, their ships up to 2 spaces. They can't save movement for a later turn. You can't transfer it to another ship or anything like that. And then the US goes, as I said, they can move in 6 spaces in their first turn. After that, it's 2. You can move diagonally as well. And then after that, that's step 1. Step 2, basically each player will say whether they are readying their planes for takeoff. You need to have your planes ready in order to launch an attack the following turn. So you have to plan ahead, and once the planes are ready, they are ready. The only downside is that if you have, let's say on the Yorktown, if they have their planes ready and the Japanese player attacks, then that ship has 1 less hit point before it is sunk. So it can be sunk much easier if they have planes, you know, especially fully fueled and armed on deck, as was the case historically. So then once you've notified the other player whether you're readying your planes, and each player does that, then the US player begins to search. And they have 4 search counters that they can put anywhere in the board. And they basically call out, say, E3, C2, much like Battleship. And the Japanese player must tell them what type of ships or types of ships are in what zone. So if they had a light cruiser in E3 in the C space, then they would have to let the American player know. This counter is just so that the American player can remember where they found those ships. You can also do a search in a space where you have a ship. You can do that as well. And again, you just have to name the types of ships. Then after the US player has searched, Japanese player does the same. The Japanese player only gets 3 areas that they can search, and they have to be within 12 zones of at least one of their ships. It doesn't need to be aircraft carriers because almost all Japanese ships carried search planes. So only 3 searches, and same deal, the US player has to name where their ships are and the types of ships that were found. Then on step 5, each player secretly writes somewhere whether they are going to launch an attack this turn. If they're not going to, they write no attack, and if both players, once they've written it down, they show simultaneously. If both players have chosen not to attack, then there's no they move on to the next turn. If they say they're going to attack, they have to name which area and zone the attack is going and how many attack factors are going to they're going to be attacking with. So I'll just go here. This shows a little bit about the planes that are involved here. So each aircraft carrier has a certain capacity of planes. So the Enterprise has 25 plane capacity, squadron capacity. T is for torpedo bomber, F is for fighter, D is for dive bomber. You can break these up in any combination you like. they don't have to be they don't have to be you know, in any specific breakdown. They're just kind of, you can just kind of make change. So you can send all 12 into one space, or you can break it up and split them up in any way you like. So that's why they've got a whole bunch of 1s and a 6 there and everything. So the fighters, torpedo bombers and dive bombers are used for attacking ships. The fighters, and this is an advanced rule, but again, not that complicated. You can either send them along with the other planes to help deal with the fighters that might be waiting for them in defense, or you can put them as what they call cap, which is close air protection, over top of your ships, so they can be used to add to the screening value of the defense to help defend against enemy planes. So basically you would say, for example, at this step you'd say, well, I'm going to send 5 torpedo bombers and 6 dive bombers to you know, the hex, whoops, you know, where they found the light cruiser. So let's say they found one E3C. You would just write that down, that they know how many dive bombers, torpedo bombers, fighters, etc. are going on that attack. Now, no squadron can attack more than one zone on any particular turn, so they have to, you know, they can't bounce from one to the other or anything like that. So after that, once the attack has been made, now I should say that the range of the planes is 14 hexes, or 14 squares, I should say. So they can move, you know, as much as 14 spaces. You need to get them back to an aircraft carrier or Midway if you're on the American side. They have to be able to come back, otherwise they're all lost, and they are not able to, you know, they're basically removed from the game. So you have to plan your route a little bit and make sure that you know, you have carriers within range of the space that you're looking to you know, attack. So the attacks are considered to be simultaneous as well. So just in case that matters, doesn't matter how they're resolved, you know, they're considered to be simultaneous. So I'll just show you this battle board here. So this is an example of the Japanese attacking 2 American ships. Now the American players space them too far apart, so they can't lend screening value to each other. Now when you're placing the ships, you have to leave a space in between. So something like this would be fine. You can't do this, and you can't put them on top of each other. They need to be spaced out a little bit. Then the attacking player basically place dive bombers over top of the ship, on top of the ship that you're attacking. And torpedo bombers, you can, again, you can split them up. They go along the sides, and you can break those up any which way you like. So in this case, there's 1 dive bomber squadron attacking. There's 4 from the left, I believe that's the starboard side, and 2 from the port side. Forgive me if I've mixed those up. And this guy is just 1 lone torpedo squadron attacking the Yorktown from that side. So basically, once you have that set up, then you figure out the odds. So you figure out, in this example, the Portland has a 3 screening value, so they can direct that against any of the attacking forces. So in this case, probably they'll put it against the torpedo bombers. Now, when you're looking at the odds, if you direct the screening value towards this group here, and you can only direct it towards one group. If a ship isn't being attacked and they're within range, something like this, then they can use the screening value to help out. But they can pick a group, you know, that way. But otherwise, you just get to direct the screening value to one particular group. And so in this case, that would be a 4-on-3 attack. If there is no screening value, no defense applied, it's considered to be against 1. So this dive bomber is a 1-on-1. This torpedo bomber is a 2-on-1. And basically you just open up the chart here, and you roll the odds. So let's say on that one torpedo bomber attack, it's a 1-on-1. You roll a 4, you get 1 hit on the ship, and they lose all 4 squadrons. If they rolled a 1, they get 1 hit, and they'd only lose 2 squadrons. So if that was the roll, you would just reduce this guy by 2, and then you'd mark a hit on the Portland on the hit record. There we go. And then you would move on to the next attack. And once all the ships have attacked, then then basically everything goes back. The planes would fly back on the search board, back to the aircraft carrier. On the carrier complement, they would go into the recovery box. They need to be refueled for the next attack, so they are put there, and then they're flown back to whatever. Then they're put back onto the deck of the Enterprise, where they can, or wherever they landed, they can be put back and then readied after that. So you do have to plan a little bit time-wise to make sure that the you can't just do attack after attack after attack with the same planes. You have to bring them back and refuel and all that stuff. So just as I said, they have to be flown back to the place they came from. They can be flown somewhere else as long as there's room. Each of the carriers and so forth have a capacity. The Enterprise has 25 capacity. You can mix and match. They could be all dive bombers that land on there as long as there's no more than 25. Midway can hold 30 squadrons on the second turn and thereafter. So once they're ready, so you can always use Midway as a base as well. So the basically, when an aircraft carrier sinks, any aircraft that is on the deck at that time are lost. If there's some that are in the air, they are fine as long as they have somewhere else that they can land. So with Midway, which is the goal of the Japanese player to land there, the way that they attack Midway is they have to move a cruiser called the Atago. That was the flagship of the invasion fleet and was basically the troop transport. So the Atago has to be on Midway for 4 consecutive turns. So Atago is very important for the Japanese player to protect and very important for the American player to sink. Even though they won't be able to know until they attack exactly which cruiser they're dealing with. If the U.S. player loses Midway, obviously the Japanese player gains, to 15 points, and the U.S. player will lose the unlimited search that they can otherwise do across the board, and they're limited just as a Japanese player is. They can only search areas that are within 12 zones of a ship, and that obviously would be a big deal. So the Japanese player doesn't get that unlimited search though if they take Midway. All right, if there is any time when there's surface combat, so this is something where basically on the battle board, again, just to go back there, you would put all the American ships on the American side of the board, all the Japanese ships would be over here, and basically you can each move kind of one space at a time. You don't have to move, but you can move one space at a time, and you can attack battleships and heavy cruisers, I believe, are 4 spaces away. You can do an attack. So for example, the Portland firing on the Zuiho would be a 6 on 2, and you would roll on the surface combat results. So it'd be a 2 on 1, and you'd roll a 3, you'd get 2 hits on that other ship. So it's fairly straightforward. After 4 turns on the battle board, you go back to the search board and continue from there. The ships that were in the battle though cannot move that next turn. They can then move after that and potentially re-engage. And you can also add other ships to the mix if they're within range as well. So if the ships are that were in the battle can't move, and then the following turn you're able to move other ships in, you can restart that battle board surface attack. Another couple things, the turn record has some night turns here. So when it's a night turn, you can't do any air activity, so no air search and no air attacks. You can still search with your ships, and you can still move and do surface battles and so forth. If there's the opportunity. Basically that's the other thing. I'll just say that with the fighters, that's the one last thing that's kind of again an advanced rule. You don't need to use fighters at all if you don't want to. But with the fighters, as I said, if you have fighters either going with the with your attacking bombers, and they run into fighters in the other person's space, and you're looking to distract them so they're not adding to the screening value, then you do kind of similar roles here, fighter versus fighter results, where you would add up the two groups and the odds, and you can see that it'll specify how many defenders are lost and how many attackers are lost. If there are fighters on the defense, that if you have, for example, 10 fighters on the defense and the attacker has 7 on the offense, then you only need to match what is there. So if you only need to match the 7, the remaining 3 can be peeled off to help defend. On the battle board, they can help defend on the with the screening value against a specific group of planes. So they can be used for that. That's basically the main thing. I guess the only other thing is that if you are on the battle board in surface combat, you can attempt to escape. There's another chart here that you can use for battle board withdrawal. It's pretty simple. If you roll 5 or 6, you are successful. Anything else and you are unsuccessful, and you must continue the battle. The one other thing that I was thinking of as well is there's something called an optional rule called Midway reduction, where you have to reduce Midway to to 0 strength from 20 in order before the Atago can actually invade. So this is where you would send planes to attack. They could be, if you had certain odds or whatever, you get a certain roll, you can actually soften up Midway for attack right away. But basically the idea is that you need to get the the hits on Midway before you can soften that up and attack. So other than that, that's as I said, that's kind of the basic game. You can add the optional rules are the Midway reduction part, the surface combat, and the fighters. So you can leave those rules out if you like, but I think they add a lot to the game. And hopefully this helps you to learn how to play.